everything.
Alright guys, we are back in Free Code Camp doing Bonfire Sorted Union. A quick shout out to our sponsor, Mentors for EDU at edustudio.org. They're a cool STEM course startup and a tech blog, so great little resource to check out. But let's go ahead and dive right in. So what is it that we're actually trying to do in this Bonfire Sorted Union? So what we're trying to do is to take in 2 or more arrays and then return a single array of unique values. For instance, if it was just 132 5214, it would go 1 2 3 4 5. It would include all of them, and there would be no duplicates of any kind. And the reason it gets a little tricky is because we're actually going to be taking in multiple arrays with one function. So we're going to have to use something called the arguments object, and the arguments object is similar to an array, except it's not an array, but it has some properties of an array, and that in itself will allow us to do this while not having to know that there's always going to be 3 arrays in here. So how did I do this? So the first thing I always do is I create a placeholder array, just because I find that easiest when not knowing if I'm actually going to have to modify the original array. So we're always going to have at least one array, and in this case I'm just gonna make a copy of it in my placeholder here. So the next thing we need to do is iterate through our arguments object. So the reason we're going to do that is the arguments object is going to store all of the arrays in itself. So if we were to actually go here and say arguments.length, what's actually going to return is 3 in this case, because there's 1 2 3 arrays. So visualize that. Now if we were going to say arguments 2 and then arguments 1, that's going to return back 1 right here. Cool. So think of it as a 2-tiered array in which this one is which one of these we're choosing, and the second array is the actual individual component of our choice. So that's how you kind of want to think of it. And to do that, we're going to need to create a double for loop. The first one is going to iterate through the first parameter, meaning the array. So we're just going to go ahead and do var I is less than for variable I equal to 0. We're going to say I is less than our arguments dot length I plus, and then we're going to need to iterate again another for loop, except now this for loop is going to iterate through the specific data within each array. So we're going to say var j is equal to 0, while j is less than arguments I, so each one of the specific array we're working on, dot length j plus. And now so if you're able to figure out how the arguments work here, everything else is kind of a review. Now in here we need an if statement to check if our current placeholder array actually contains the item that we're iterating. So we're going to iterate through all the values, and we're going to say, hey, check this placeholder array and see if the array item that we're checking is contained within it. And the way we would do that, so we're going to say if the placeholder dot index of, so if you remember, index of will actually check the array to see if it can return a number. If it returns -1, it means that the value is not contained within the array, the index of the array that we're checking. So we're going to say our arguments, the current array we're on, I, plus the current value that we're checking of that current array, and we're going to say if it is exactly equal to -1, meaning that if index of returns a -1, it is not contained within placeholder. We then want to add it to our placeholder array, and that should be fairly simple. So let's just say placeholder.push, and then we're going to add the current value that we're on here of arguments I and j. And then because I set a placeholder to the value here, we are just going to set r1 is equal to our placeholder. And I believe that should be it. So let's run it, make sure I didn't make any typos. Good. So now let's go ahead and go over the code one time as we put in our documentation. This is very important just because later on you're going to actually be going back and looking at this, and it's really going to be quite helpful. So this we're going to create a duplicate array from original array. This iterates. Oops, sorry, my typing's really bad. Iterates through the length of arguments. Iterates through current index value of arguments. And then here we check if array contains the value of arguments. Return, and we'll do another comment down below. Returns -1 if it does not. And then finally add it to the end of the placeholder array. And last but not least, just a little note right here. It says set original array equal to altered array. So I hope you guys found this helpful. The main things to kind of get from this is how arguments work. Arguments has a .length function and I believe a callee function that we didn't use in this case. I don't even remember what it does, and one more that they just have said don't even use it. It doesn't make sense for current documentation. But it's really important to check out this. Obviously, I didn't use the array.reduce. In this case, I just iterated through twice and saw, oh man, this is how I know how to do it. So this is how I'm going to do it. Eventually, if I have to use .reduce, I'm sure I will. There's probably a better way of doing it. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out our sponsor one more time at edustudio.org. Thanks, guys.